Okay, beginning this new turn, I revealed the command points, put down the the leaders and the reinforcement points. You can see a whole pile of Union commanders available at this point. Again, it helps them stretch out the turn, get that last move action, and as they get promotions and the like, that also increases how many leaders they have in the pool. So they always have this ability to control the dynamics of the game a little bit more than the Confederates do. The command points, well, I already went through that. It was similar to last turn. The Confederates again went trans-Mississippi, then east, and the Union did the opposite. The Union got a slightly worse roll. Some of the rolls are not particularly good. They got a 4, 3, 2s, whereas the Confederates got actually 5 in their primary, 3, and then 2s. So, you know, those don't work out even based on what you pick. They're just, you've got to deal with the luck. And then a new placement's been placed in. Next turn, Kentucky opens up, and that's got a significant effect. And I can actually tell you both sides went with that as their major goal in the Western Theater. The Western Theater is really where the game actually generally ends up being won. Just as historically in the war, Virginia is just a morass. That's where all the, a lot of the real sort of glory and glamour of the war is, with the Army of Northern Virginia, the Army of the Potomac. But the truth of the matter is, they didn't make much ground there. Even before the entrenchment period came into play, Lee was able to hold the Union off. And you don't even really need Lee to do that. The terrain up in the north, not really north, but in northern Virginia, is such that it is tough to push your way through, whereas things are wide open here, and you have the rivers to operate along, which makes it much, much easier for the Union to really do some broad strokes. If you're a navally minded person, which I have trouble doing it, there's no question. Okay, we have one more thing, which is we have to worry about the blockade, because the blockade's starting to take effect. 10% of the CSA imports go away. That's 4 points. We're down to there. Okay, not a big deal yet, and it really, the incremental levels of the blockade don't do a lot. I mean, it has to get up high, and by the time it gets up high, the Union's already probably got the Confederates suffering some losses. So you wouldn't expect this to do much at this point, but it's included just for the, to factor everything in. If you've got to have it there, you might as well have it there across the board. And now we just slip right into the action phases again. New ships in the naval pool. Nothing new for the Confederates yet. They don't get the Virginia until turn 4. Well, we open up the second turn with an initial roll where both players rolled an 8. First of all, you do have to kind of remember where these markers were, and that can be kind of problematic. I've forgotten a few times in the game. I'm pretty sure I remember now because the CPs haven't moved. So each side is going to get the results of an 8 on the chart, which is 6, 4, 1, 1, and then 3 U.S. Naval. Let me give the 3 U.S. Naval first. Okay, and 6, 4, 1, 1. I'll be 6 more in the east, and yeah, I'm over on the 10 now. 4, 1, 1, and 1 far western. And then over here as well, 6 puts me to 11. 4, 1, 1, 1. And now I roll again. Now this moves up, and it means if we both roll a 7, the turn is over. And this could just crank all the way through. There's no guarantee that there's even going to be a single action in a turn. Of course, it's highly unlikely that that'll happen, but it's something to keep in mind. That's something the Confederates often want to root for, because this thing just gets boosted up, Once it gets far enough, there's a good chance that the turn might end before everybody gets to spend all their CPs. They also kind of like being able to get a high CP total in the early part of the war. Later on, it becomes much more of a pain in the butt for them. All right, the Union got a big 5-point advantage to get the first action, and they used that for a couple of things, one of which was to ship a couple of strength points down to Butler. Plans on breaking out of Fort Monroe and threatening Richmond. And that is risky. That is a real threat to the Confederates. They're not paying attention to it. We'll see. Because both sides seem to be pursuing their own little goals here. But they use the other 3 points to move this command of troops. And now this is still hidden, but it's Burnside leading 4 strength points down to basically ward Price off and maybe even drive him away. Depends on how far things go. I don't have a whole lot of points in the Trans-Mississippi, but I have the discretionary ones, so I could make an attack. Let's say I got a 6-point swing, I could make an attack, hit him, and then undemoralize all with that. And that's one of the reasons you want to get double the action points that you need so that to make an attack, so that when you make it, you get the opportunity to recover from it. Because otherwise your opponent may recover, especially if you're going first in the action. Say this was 5 and the Union made the attack, and now the Confederates get to recover with Price. They wouldn't get to hit right away, but then they've got an undemoralized force and the Union has demoralized force. But that's not what happened, obviously. Burnsides couldn't reach that far. Instead, the Confederates spent their points on a couple of things. They beefed up the Army of Northern Virginia, including getting a new leader. They got Joe Johnston back. And they marched up here. With the extra strength point they picked up, they were able to overrun the 1 strength point Union unit here. And now they're attacking across the river at Pope. Now, they may not outnumber Pope terribly much, but they out-leader him. They've got 8 strength points. Pope's only got 7. So that'll give them the +1 table. However, they will be facing the unnavigable river shift. I don't think there's any other terrain there. No, they're not going through a pass. Which means that we'll be on the 0 table, going from +1 down to 0. But we got a lot of leaders. Johnston has +1, +2, +3, +4, +5 points of leaders and a reroll. Okay? That gives him a lot of power here. So both sides are going to roll. Pope has nothing. So Pope rolled an 8. And that'll be on the defender. Now we're at 8 and 7 strength points respectively, which is a medium-sized force. So I'll be doing a D2. And the Union will be doing a D1. I'm sorry, they'll be doing a 1. I'm good with a 1. So I'm going to let them keep that die roll. But what happens if I roll more or less is really the question. And you can't just assume, hey, a 3 is a bad roll. It may not be that bad because it's on a barrier here. So if I roll, I only get 1 reroll. I could get a D1 only, and that wouldn't be as good. 4, 5, a 6. I'm not going to do better than a D2. So I'll let this roll stand, and I take 1 hit. The Union loses 2 strength points and is going to have to withdraw. I don't know which way to retreat. And then I got to make some leader loss checks. I'll tell you if anything exciting happens, but chances are there are some low-ranking people in here like Jackson who it would be very important if they die. And if they don't get injured, and they can just get wounded as well, if they don't get injured, they're going to get a promotion shit over on the next turn. With only a 2-point difference on the next activation, the Confederates pull somebody in with the hope of, and they get somebody decent. D.H. Hill, he's very effective at moving small forces like these 2 strength points that perhaps reinforce Magruder down there. So I'm very worried about that. But here's the problem. After I pulled him, well, I had already taken a reinforcement over into the Army of Northern Virginia, so I took another one. 2-point swings, I could have used this one. I screwed up by not, but I don't like fudging too much with this game. And then with the Union, I shipped some more troops down to good old Burnside's. He's got quite a powerful force there, full strength corps, 6 strength points. That should be quite powerful and able to handle Price. Price has no way of getting reinforcements to him. If he was a 3-star general, he could make that into an army in Missouri and be able to take reinforcements there, because he does have a supply line running up. The other thought the Union had is, hey, maybe I can take Memphis. The problem, because they have a, not Rosecrans, but they have Admiral Foote there. But he doesn't have enough ships. He only has 1 strength point of naval transport here, so he can only carry 1 unit down there. That's probably not enough to take Memphis. I have enough forces under Rosecrans as a whole if I had more ships, but I'm not going to be able to bring much in anyway. I only have 1 more in the pool for this turn. So it's not time for the naval playing on the Mississippi. But I got to be careful with the Confederates, because, you know, losing Memphis really forces me down to the, okay, Vicksburg is all I have then. The only place where I can fortify and really have a strong position to try to interdict the river. And that largely throws everything into question, because New Orleans is pretty easy to take, actually. Again, once the navies are fully active. The next activation was a big one again. The Confederates continued up here and then down, hitting Pope's force. They got the advantage there. They knocked him down. He's down 3 more strength points. He withdrew into Washington. Confederate additional points were used to reinforce Magruder here. And now we've got a demoralized force in Washington. So the Union's 5 points were spent, 3 to rally, and then the other 2 to build the Army of the Potomac. I don't really need that for defensive reasons. Part of me wants to just throw reinforcements in there, but if I can fling Johnston back, I've got a lot more command points than he does in this area. If I can push him back, I might be able to actually recover some of the damage, not just the damage, but actually regain the initiative and do some good things over in the east. On the negative side, the Confederates have taken a couple of losses in terms of leaders here. Not permanent losses, but wounds to both Hardee and Jackson. That means my army is no longer in as good a shape as it was. There was a temptation to hit Washington here. Remember, if I capture Washington, that's 20 victory points, and that will win the game at this point in the game. If you can do Washington this early, bang, the game is over. Unfortunately, I don't know how many strength points are there, right? Because I'm playing with the hidden strength, and I don't have a cav leader in this stack, I don't believe. There are very few cav leaders. I think all I have is Stuart over in the west. So, I don't know what's there. If it's 4, say, and I know it's more actually, but let's say it's 4, that's 2 to 1, okay? With 2 shifts against for the fortress, that's pretty good. Do I want to chance the attack? Personally, I know that there's more troops there for the Union. I just built that. There's 6, and that's going to only be on the +3 table. I'm going to have the Confederates, because they just got a roll of a 4 activation. I'm going to give them a roll and see if they want to make the attack. Because that's on odds they're going to do it. So in a way, that, you know, this is what their strategy is. Their strategy is to try to crack Washington. Yeah, I think they're going to go for it. All right. I know that they're duped by this. But now the question is, I have 4 points. I can spend 2 of them. Leaders would be one of those points, perhaps, because I'm down to only +2 now on the combat table. I've got some additions there. Getting to an even number here is important too. So I'm going to give myself a reinforcement, and I'm going to draw a leader for there. See if we get somebody useful. Oh joy, yeah, that ain't gonna help. We got Earl Van Dorn. Oh well. that gives a bonus to my opponent. I'm still going to go in. So that's 3 more command points there. I don't have them. Shit. Well, there's something you should always do. Know how many command points you have left. Crap. Well, the Confederates spent one of their command points to send Van Dorn by rail to here, then running up here. Leaders have a lot of movement capability. Basically, they can take the rail for free, and they have 12 movement points. His plan is to build an army in the Trans-Mississippi and try to defeat the Union there. The Union did not want to attack with Butler. They've done their job by forcing the Confederates to commit more to Magruder's defense. Instead of using an Eastern Command here to try to fight Johnston, what I did was move McClellan, and he attacked at Graft and demoralized the army. He has 2-to-1 odds, so it was fairly likely, even though 2 shifts were against him. It still put him on the +3 to +4 table. There's a lot of room between 2-to-1 and 1-to-1, essentially, in this game, which works very well. And then the extra point went down here. West Virginia has been liberated, essentially, from Virginia at this point. Unless the Confederates take a city or town from it, it will end up converting over to Union, and then the Union will get the points for that on top of the points they have right now at 11. They gain 3 points this turn. They'll be getting those 3... They'll be getting 5 more points for converting West Virginia. And then they can start raising troops in West Virginia. Not that that's a huge deal. Alright, a big 6-pointer for the Confederates this time. And damned if I know what they did. 3 of the points definitely went into Memphis. The rest went into building up the Army of the West. Now you can see the Army of the West is not happy. The Union used their first 3 points to march Burnside's down attack. He had 2-to-1 odds. Now, he gave a +1 to Van Dorn, but Van Dorn gave 2 rerolls, and that changed the nature of the battle, those 2 rerolls. The initial die roll was the best possible for the Confederates. Van Dorn could have tried to retreat, and he probably would have succeeded, but I didn't want to give up the depot here. I feel like I'm going to lose the Trans-Mississippi if I didn't win that battle, essentially. Also, I didn't know how big a force Burnside had. He ended up having 6 strength points. The rest of the Union points went into reinforcing Washington, which I felt was important. I was saving them to rally Burnside's so that the next action, maybe I could hit that. Price got wounded as well, and we got a big pile of Confederate wounded leaders here. Now, as those guys come up in here, and in fact, some of them should have, I don't know who's left in the pool. Price and Pemberton. Price is 2nd star if it comes up. Well, what's up with people like Jackson? Oh, they didn't fight till this round. Okay, so if Price's second star comes up while he's wounded, and it probably will, he'll get promoted while injured, essentially. Confederates get a big enough jump to rally Van Dorn, and now things are getting tough. I don't have enough points to continue an attack through, I have enough to make 1 more attack, but I like to have enough to recover as well. So I don't really want to launch that attack with Burnsides. I don't have enough points likewise to conduct an attack over on the east. Same issue. These Confederate infantry here, unless something's done about them, are going to dissolve no matter what. So I don't have to worry about them. I do kind of worry about Johnston. I'd like to hit him. But as long as he doesn't move, and I've got an army that can intercept, there's not a lot he can do to me. He's not going to cut off Washington because I've got the rail line coming out of Baltimore, which connects me to enough cities that he won't even get the 2 victory points for that. I'm sitting in Washington fairly secure. He's not going to take it from me. So what I did was started building up my army of the Tennessee, and I'm preparing to send that down. I had to decide whether I wanted the Cumberland or the Tennessee over on this side. In a sense, the Tennessee makes more sense over here. So you know what? I'm going to actually instead build the Army of the Cumberland. You can't be sure which way it's going to go, but the Tennessee can be a bigger army. And I'd rather have that along the Mississippi and have the weaker army in the center. I always want to build the Tennessee first, but I think I'm better off building the smaller army first at this point. We'll see. Of course, I'm facing the Confederate Army of Tennessee, which can get up to 15 strength points. Oh no, the Tennessee only goes to 12. I'm sorry, I want to build the Army of the Tennessee, not the Cumberland. Oops, well, I'll fix that. But anyway, I also channeled some more troops in, including, it turned out, a new leader. I've got Lyons in there. Of course, I've got Banks as the Army commander. I may want to spend a command point and move McClellan over in charge of here. Because what I've got in charge of the Potomac, McDowell, he's not that bad. He's equivalent to McClellan. Putting McClellan in charge of an army is important. For one thing, he'll get jumped over to an army otherwise, but that's not that big a deal. But he is good enough at this time in the game that you kind of want him in charge of an army, even though he'll be a pain to remove later. So the turn had looked like it was winding down, with the Confederates not having lots and lots of CPs over in the Trans-Mississippi, but not a lot they can do with them. Van Dorn doesn't have as big a force as Burnside, so it's tough to really be able to act. He has to get Burnside's out of the way to be able to push further north, and he just doesn't have that opportunity available. He's kind of blocked in. So that was kind of troubling, and the Union spent most of their CPs. They have some naval ones left. Well, we just got the same die roll, so we're going to pump up to here and add some more CPs to everyone. Now, of course, we could roll the same again and end up ending, but this time it would have only ended on a 7. Now it'll end on a 5 through 9. As we move on, the Confederates are beginning to get something that usually they don't manage. Not just this fortress up here in Memphis, but they've thrown some troops into New Orleans and started fortifying that. I usually don't end up with blockades on both sides of the river, and this is a powerful position, especially the New Orleans one. That almost always falls just because there's no Union troops there, and they can, there's no Confederate reason for troops to be there except to prevent the Union from landing there. It's not really a place you can launch a lot out of until you control the whole Mississippi, but I like the idea of fortifying it and keeping this whole section of the river under Confederate control. It makes it very difficult on the Union. For the Union side, they're kind of pittering about, looking for stuff to do. They've thrown reinforcements into the Army of the Potomac. They're thinking about hitting Johnston if they get a chance. The Confederates also managed to slip around. They couldn't just go this way. They couldn't go into Union territory, but they can kind of rip around the edge here because McClellan can't actually intercept. He doesn't have an army. So now this Confederate unit that was essentially destroyed by being demoralized might just make it out, and with all these extra command points, they'd be able to survive. Saving every Confederate strength point seems important to me. It may or may not be, but you hate losing them because they end up with such a shortage at the end of the game, towards the end of the game. Another big role, and the Confederates are kind of diddling around, moving troops into place where they can rally them, shifting up here to try to cut the supplies at Rolla, see what they can do. Being out of supply isn't that big a deal. It lowers it is if you're demoralized, but it lowers your movement rate by 1. And in combat, the effect is you automatically get demoralized at the end of the combat, though. So it could mean that Van Dorn could make an attack on Burnside and hurt him a little. The problem is Burnside's could burn the depot he's on as his combat supply. You can either trace back or just burn the depot you're sitting on. So there's no real guarantee. It's just a slowing down type thing to run and take this. What I haven't done, and probably should have, is use Stand Weighty, move him into place. Chances are his troops don't count for anything, though, so it's kind of painful to spend the 2 action points, and you can't use the native units, the civilized Indians, except if Weighty's there. So you've got to spend those points. So what I did also was some far western stuff. You can see all of these are Confederate. One of them went up and tried to burn Lawrence or Fort Riley. He didn't really succeed ended up alerting Lawrence and getting chased away from Fort Riley, changing sides, but then I got lucky with the change sides. But what the Union did was they activated McDowell, marched in here, attacked Johnston at +2. The Union thought they had a bigger force comparatively than the Confederates did. It turned out they didn't, and it turned out they gave 2 re-rolls to Johnston, which didn't really help him too much, and Johnston had better troop strength. I left Don Carlos Buell behind in charge at Washington, but in the casualty lists, not only did McDowell get injured there, but also Sherman did, and there's always a chance these guys just die, and that's a big deal with Sherman. Anyway, had enough points, 6 points, that I could do the attack and then rally from it. But Don Carlos Buell is now in charge of the Army of the Potomac, which is not a pleasing thing.